I want to welcome everyone to our workshop or webinar on Learn to Sell Better. We have Beverly Gottlieb and Dick Rossman. They're both mentors with the Score Boston chapter, and I think they do an excellent job with this topic. So as we get started, though, I want to tell you a little bit about Score, just in case you don't know anything about us. We are in the business of selling or providing, not selling, providing small business information to the small business community. And we do that in a couple different ways. One of them is through our website at score.org. So I encourage you to take a look if you haven't. There's lots of great templates you can download and articles to read and videos to watch. Lots of great information. You'll also find listed there our upcoming workshops and webinars, which is another way we share information. And the most important way that we share information is through our mentoring. Our mentoring is always free. And our mentors come to us from a variety of backgrounds with a lot of different experiences that they want to share with the small business community. We're working with those that are trying to decide if small business is right for them. We're working with those in the planning phase, and we're working with those that are already in business. Folks come to us asking every business question you can ever imagine. We've probably had it, so don't feel shy in reaching out. So a beginning session is going to be getting to know you and wanting to find out what your goals and your challenges are. And your mentor is going to help you come up with a plan to meet those goals and overcome those challenges. And the wonderful thing about our group too is that they work as a team. You might be meeting with one mentor on that day, but their wheels are turning. They're reaching out to who else they can bring in to the fold to help you be as successful as possible. So strongly encourage you to do that. It's very easy to get a SCORE mentor. You're going to go to the score.org website, and there's a blue box where you can put your zip code in. That will connect you to the chapter that's nearest you, and then they're going to ask you a couple of quick questions, and that information will be used to help assign you to a mentor that is closer aligned with what your needs are. So we are recording. I will post this recording within the next 24 to 48 hours. I will put in chat how to find that recording so that you have that information. We do anticipate a pretty hearty crowd, a really good crowd of people today. So we do want to use that Q&A button on the Zoom bar to submit questions to the presenters. And we'll get through as many questions as we possibly can. So again, if you could please use the Q&A for questions you want asked to the presenter. Everything else can go into chat. If you put your question in chat, sometimes it can get lost. So because there's always lots of comments and things going on. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dick. You're starting first. And
yes, yeah, I'll
okay.
Intro, say hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Dick Rossman, and I'm with my partner in crime from Score Boston, Beverly Gottlieb. And we're talking today about how small business owners can sell better and sell more. Beverly, you want to start by giving the group a little bit of background about yourself, and then I'll do the same, and then we'll get going.
I grew up locally in Massachusetts. I went to University of Pennsylvania Wharton School. I started as an accountant for 3 years and 1 week, long enough to be certified, since I was very good with numbers. But my passion was more along the lines of selling. I opened an insurance agency brokerage at the age of 25. I was the main salesperson, and we grew that business substantially. And I actually sold it when I was 50 and promptly retired, and am now helping others find customers. And that's what I do while I'm at SCORE mentoring.
Thanks, Beverly. So my background has been with small business management here with a number of different small businesses in New England. My role has always been around sales and marketing. I started in a family-owned commercial printing company in the Boston area, was there for 20 plus years, and got involved with, left that company, got involved with a software startup. Also was involved in other manufacturing companies, a health professional services company, been a sales coach and a sales trainer and a sales consultant. I retired about 8 years ago and have been with SCORE since then. So let's get started. The first question that I want to ask, just to get a sense of who's in the room today, so to speak, can you put in the chat 1 or 2 words about your business? What is it that you sell? Just so we can get an idea of who's here. And Teresa, maybe you can just read off some of them as they come in. What's your product or your service?
Well, we have travel, stained glass art, Italian biscotti, and ooh, gosh, it's scrolling really fast. Ultrasound, permanent cosmetics, food and beverages, massage, shots, childcare, med spa. Oh my gosh, frozen meal kits, staffing placement services. Boy, I'm not going to catch them all.
All right. Okay. That's good enough. Great. Thanks. Thank you all. I just want to get a sense, and as we expected, it's a very, very lot. But what we all have in common, obviously, is that we need, in order to have a successful business, we need to sell those products and services. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's first make sure we're all on the same page and we understand the difference between sales and marketing. So marketing is everything that you do that sets the stage for the sale. Could be any advertising that you may do, all your social media, your blogs, your podcasts, any branding, even your business card, but direct mail, maybe webinars, maybe you do speaking engagements, you participate in trade shows. That's all marketing, and it's all really important. And SCORE has lots of webinars about how to improve your marketing, if you're so inclined. But we're talking today about sales, because sales is what puts money in your pocket. Sales is what gets the order. So I'm going to guess that many of you today are what we call solopreneurs. You're the only person in your business, and you wear lots of hats. And one of the hats that you're wearing is a selling hat. And even if you've got some other folks in the business with you, if you're the owner, you're in sales. And many people are uncomfortable with that, and that's okay. I work with many people who perhaps are more engineering oriented or finance oriented. And the last thing that they ever might have thought of themselves as being is a salesperson. And so what I tell those folks is, fine, don't think of yourself as a salesperson. Think of yourself as a problem solver. And you're going to hear me say that a lot today, because that's really what salespeople do. They uncover what their prospects' problems are, and if they've got a solution for that problem, their job is to ask the right questions and uncover the prospect's problem and try and convince that prospect that you can solve their problem, and you're worth them devoting some of their resources, their time, their dollars, to get the order. But as I say, that doesn't always come naturally. So, and part of the problem is the perception that people have about salespeople. So when I say salesperson, what are some of the words that you might think of? You can think of your favorite car salesman if you want, but what are some of the descriptive words that people have about salespeople? Teresa, you want to read a few off?
Pushy, sleazy, pushy. Yeah. Oh, I got a charismatic, beggar,
right.
convincing. Yeah. Like to talk. Yeah.
Most of those phrases, I love charismatic. I haven't had that one yet, but that's great. Most of them are negative, as you can imagine. But the sales process certainly doesn't need to be that way. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about today, because there are great processes that will help you become a successful salesperson that are positive, and that's what we all want to strive for, because done properly, the selling process is going to benefit you, the seller, because you're going to receive some money for your work, but it's also going to benefit the buyer because that buyer has a problem that you're going to be solving. But you have to understand that not everyone is ready to buy today when you may be talking with them or meeting with them. So you need to learn how to handle rejection and understand that today their problem may not be large enough for you to solve, but that doesn't mean in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 12 months that problem is going to grow, and presumably they will think of you and come back to you when they're ready to talk then. Everyone has to understand, people want to buy. People enjoy buying, but no one wants to be sold to. So people want or need to buy from you because they have a problem. They have a problem that you can solve. But in order to do that, you, the salesperson, the problem solver, need to have confidence in 2 ways. First, you've got to truly believe in your product or your service. You've got to believe that you indeed have that solution to your customers' problems. And you also need to have the right attitude. You need to be going into a meeting with a prospect or a conversation that you're going to ask the right questions and uncover the need, and you're going to, in the appropriate meeting, you're going to get the order. Because the opposite is that you go into these meetings thinking that you aren't going to get the order, and that's hard. That mentally that is self-defeating. So you may not, you understand, as we said, you may not be getting that order today all the time, but if you go into the situation with what we call head trash, you're never going to succeed. Head trash is what goes on in our minds that has no basis in fact or reality, that clouds our judgment, that makes us take actions that go against being successful. For example, let's say you're in a networking meeting, there's 20 people in the room, everyone's there to meet everyone else, and you're looking across the room and someone's standing by themselves, but they're staring at you funny, or you think they're staring at you funny. They've got their hands crossed. Maybe you don't even like their haircut, who knows? But you say to yourself, you get into this head trash mode. Oh my goodness, that person's looking strange. He's giving me the evil eye. I'm not even going to go over and talk to him. You have no idea if that's the case. You don't know what that person's thinking. You don't know why their hands are crossed, and you've lost that opportunity to meet someone and maybe uncover a new prospect. So you got to get that head trash whenever it comes into your brain to get it out. The other thing that it's important for people in sales to do is to separate your identity from your role. Your identity is who you are as a person. You're a wonderful, warm, loving parent, grandparent, friend, spouse, whatever is in your life that makes up your identity. And we also all have many roles. Today, we're talking about our role as a salesperson. And we need to keep them separate and distinct. Let's say, today maybe you have a lousy day in your role as a salesperson. You call 10 people and no one picks up the phone. Customer calls you and cancels an order. I don't know, whatever it may be. If you ranked yourself at the end of the day on how your day was as a salesperson, you'd give it a 4. Well, that doesn't mean that when you go home that same day, that your identity is not still a 10. And you need to separate that and realize that the actions that you take and even the success or the failures that you have in your role as a salesperson don't affect your identity of who you are as a person. And what you need to do is think about, why did you only give yourself a 4 today? What are the actions that you can take tomorrow to improve that, so that you can make that reading a 7 or an 8 or a 9 in your role as a salesperson. But always keep thinking, separate yourself from that identity. Let's talk a little bit about who your customer is, because it's really important to define your target customer. And every once in a while, I'll meet with a new client talking about their business, and I ask them, who's your client? And they'll say, oh, everyone, anyone can use my product or my service. And, indeed, that may be true, but it's not realistic, and it's not useful because you can't market and you can't sell to everyone. You've got to narrow that down and create a niche for yourself and decide what's your target market going to be. And you can define that in lots of different ways. One, maybe it's geography. It's important that you meet with your clients, and so you don't want to go, too far afield from a 100-mile radius from your office. Maybe you want to only work with women. Maybe it's people between 30 and 50. Maybe it's sales, maybe it's HR managers, whatever it may be, but narrow it down. So for an example, let's say you're selling human resources benefits, life insurance, disability insurance, and you've decided to specialize in the pharmaceutical industry. So your target may be pharmaceutical companies with over 100 employees who have their offices in the New England area, and you want to meet with the HR managers. I mean, that's a legitimate target. You can find a database of those folks. You can market to them. You can identify them, and you can become known as the expert in that group of people. You want to become that big fish in that little pond. That doesn't mean you can't work in more than one pond. You may get a lead in the financial services world, and I'm not saying not to pursue it. You can have more than one pond, but keep them narrow. Find your niches, because it's a lot easier if you're identified as that expert, that employee benefits expert in that industry. You're going to get referrals in that industry. You're going to be able to market specifically to those people. It just makes your life an awful lot easier. I'll give you an example. I had a client who was a massage therapist in the Metro West Boston area, and she was a great massage therapist, but she had a lot of competition, and so her business was somewhat flat. So she decided to narrow her pond down, and she became certified as an oncology massage therapist. She started to work with cancer patients, and she connected with physicians' practices and with hospitals, and she became known as one of the primary massage therapists working to help alleviate pain that cancer patients are having. And she doubled and tripled her business. She became very successful by becoming that big fish in a smaller pond. So many people in sales think that their job is to talk all about themselves and the wonderful features that their product or their service offers. And I'm going to suggest the better method is 180 degrees opposite of that. You want to understand your value, not your features, but what are the benefits that you provide. Think of this from your customer's point of view. What are your customers' problems that you can solve? What distinguishes you? What separates you from your competition? What makes you unique? In other words, why should your customer, your prospect, buy from you? What is it that you have so that you can solve those customer problems better than someone else? That's what you want to be asking yourself all the time. And all your messaging should be focused in that direction. Your website, your messaging on your website, talk about the problems, not all the great super duper features, but what are the problems that you solve, and be specific and get testimonials from your clients talking about how you help them, how your products and services help them specifically solve specific problems. Your elevator pitch should be in that direction. Again, your content of your website, maybe even the tagline of on your business card. Needs to be focused that way. So always think of it not from your point of view, but from your customer's point of view. So the phrase your prospect's pain is an interesting one. And what you're looking at is a diagram of something called pain funnel questions. Pain here, I'm not referring to, a headache where you take 2 aspirin. Again, I'm talking about your prospects' problems that they have that that hopefully you can help them resolve. And usually the problem ultimately becomes an emotional problem. But when you first meet a prospect, they're not going to tell you that right out of the chute. So you're going to need to ask questions along the lines of these pain funnel questions to find out what the real problem is. And when you get an emotional response with words like the Fuddwaka words here, fear, uncertainty, doubt, worry, anger, concern, anxiety, and there's lots more. When you hear those words from your prospect, now you know you've uncovered what the real problem is. So I'll give you an example. Again, let's say you're selling human resources benefits, and you meet you're in a network event, and you meet a small business owner, and you tell her what you do, and she says, I've been thinking about adding a few benefits for my employees in my company. Well, the typical salesman, the car salesman type would at least mentally jump up and down and wave his hands around and say, I do that, I do that. Let's meet and I'll show you everything I've got. Well, that's exactly the wrong approach. Because you know nothing about that person's problem. They've given you a surface situation, and you need to become much more involved, interested, and uncover what the real problem is. So you do that by asking some of these pain funnel questions. Really, and your tonality changes, and it wants to be empathetic for sure. Really, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Wow, how long has this been a problem? What have you tried to do to solve it? How important is it that you solve those questions like that? And they're different depending on the situation, of course. But by asking these questions, what you may hear from this small business owner is that she's her key employees are leaving her company because her benefits aren't adequate. They don't match her competition's benefits. And she's afraid if she loses 1 or 2 more key employees, her company's going to be in jeopardy. I'm exaggerating to make a point here, but but she's not going to tell you that right out of the chute in that first meeting. But by asking some of these pain funnel questions, you may hear and get down to, I said, she's afraid that there's the fear word. She may be anxious, she may be concerned that when you hear those words, then you know you've uncovered her real problem, and you're in a position to say something like, I worked with a company who was in similar situation last year. I don't know if I can help you, but maybe we should meet to talk more about it and see if I've got a solution for you. Well, when you get to that situation and say something as disarming as that, I don't know if I can help you, but maybe we should meet. Does that sound like a salesperson phrase? You're going to get a meeting. There's no way that woman is going to say, oh, no, sorry, nice to meet you, see you later. You're going to get the meeting, and then you can go deeper into what the problems are and present some of your solutions. I meet with a number of people in sales, and they complain that their prospects, after they make a proposal, say, sorry, you're too high. You're too expensive. And so I have the following conversation. I say, first of all, people who think that if their price is lower than their competition, they're going to sell more. And I say to that, baloney. You don't have to have the lowest price, because the lowest price doesn't necessarily equal best value. And it's value that you want to be selling. In that situation I just talked about with the human resources salesperson, even they've only had 1 meeting so far, but if the prospect is at least somewhat interested and believes that that salesperson perhaps has a good solution because he solved it for others, do you think price is most important at that time? that salesperson's established their value, and low price becomes far less important in that buying decision. So when you hear a prospect say, sorry, your price is too high, or someone else's price was lower, then maybe you haven't done a good job asking the right questions, asking enough questions, showing empathy and concern. And that's why you're not being awarded this job. It's easy. It's easy for that prospect to say, sorry, your price is too high, because you can't prove it. You never know. So that's their out. That's their easy out. But I'm telling you that for the most part, that's not really the real reason why you're not getting that order and going further with them. Competition. It's really important that you know who your competitors are. You know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their messaging is, what they say. Maybe you want to talk to some of their clients. You know, be proactive here, because you want to learn how you differ from them and what your messaging says that's not quite the same as theirs, and is perhaps even more compelling than them. You also always want to assume that your competitors are smart and they're capable, and you never want to criticize them to your prospects. I learned that the hard way many years ago when I was a rookie commercial print salesman. I was meeting with one of my good clients, and he had I was quoting on a job for him, and I asked him who else is bidding on this for him. He gave me the name of XYZ company, and I said something snarky about them. Well, I didn't get that order, and I didn't get an order from that buyer for about 2 months. And I finally asked him, you know, gee, what's going on? Did we do something wrong? And he said, remember a couple months ago, you said that, you know, somewhat off color remark about XYZ company. Well, I didn't appreciate that. They're a good customer. They're a good supplier of mine. And so when you knocked them, you sort of knocked me, because, you know, I decided to work with them. And so he took that personally, and I can't blame him. And believe me, I never made that mistake again. And we did do business. It took another month or so, but we did get back on track. As I said, so you want to understand your messaging of your competitors. What are the arguments that they may use against you? Try and not present the contrary in advance. And so always be in tune as to who your competition is and what they're selling. Last point here before Beverly picks up the webinar. We said earlier on that you as your owner or the solopreneur, you're wearing lots of hats. And one of the key hats, excuse me, is your salesperson hat. And what's really important wearing that hat is to not to wing it. You want to set aside time in your work week for selling. So for example, put it right in your calendar. Maybe it's every Monday morning from 9 to 11, whatever it may be. Put it in your calendar, and don't override it. And that's the time that you set aside. And maybe it's, you know, more than once a week, whatever. But that's the time that you want to follow up with potential leads. You want to look at your inbound inquiries and get back to them. You want to perhaps make a list of past clients that you haven't heard from in a while and get back to them. Maybe even make a couple of cold calls. Who knows what you want to do? But if you wing it and you just try and do that on an ad hoc basis, it's not going to get done. There's always something else, especially you folks who don't enjoy doing that kind of work. That's what's going to get shoved aside. And so, but if you put it in your calendar, you stick to it, and you become devoted and set a plan, you'll do it. And you also want to be setting some goals and objectives. And here we want to talk about SMART goals, S-M-A-R-T. A SMART goal is one that's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time-bound. That's a SMART goal. So, for example, let's say you want to your goal is to get 4 new customers in the next 6 months, and each of the customers wants to have a job that's at least $5,000. So that's a smart goal. It's specific. It's very, according to your business and your average client size. It's relevant, it's achievable, and it's time bound. So think about setting goals, and towards the end of this webinar, we're going to talk again about goals and how to achieve them. Beverly, you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you,
Great.
Dick. The first thing I want to say is successful people do what others aren't willing to do. And when you get to the point where you don't want to make those 10 phone calls, or you're afraid to make the call and get the answer, or you have to go the extra mile, just think successful people do what others aren't willing to do. The first thing I'm going to touch on is something that Dick has just touched on. You want to define as precisely as you can your customer. It'll help you figure out how to find them, where to find them, and what to say to them. Know their problems. Not only know the problems that you're going to solve, but know all the problems that they're facing, because you can talk about those and create rapport. People are going to feel that you know their industry, that you're invested in their industry, in what they're going through, and it will help create a bond between you. Also, find out what conferences do they go to? What trade shows do they go to? What websites do they visit? What periodicals do they read? How do they access information on who they want to buy something from? Again, the more you know about them, the better it is. Even their hobbies. Maybe there's a commonality among the hobbies of the people that you work with. The other thing is that people don't realize is you can have very strong multiple customer segments. Especially when you're first starting out, people are like, well, I don't really know who my customer is. So in the beginning, it may be a shotgun approach, but you really want to think about, once you start getting customers, their commonalities. I had worked with a locksmith and talking about 2 different segments. He had one group, which were the kids that locked themselves out of BU, BC, Northeastern on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. Now that was his cash flow. But his other segment were property owners, where they had a property manager, where there would be multiple units and he's changing all the locks or doing all of the different software updates on the locks for big buildings. So obviously, both are really good client segments for him, but you would market to each one quite differently. And think outside the box. Just because everyone seems to be chasing after this group of people doesn't mean there's not another profitable segment. I did insurance and nobody wanted to work with the startups. And to me, that was very short-sighted, because they said, well, there's no money in the startups. But what they didn't think about is that startups grow. And by the time they became the customers that they wanted to do business with, I was so embedded in them that they were not able to displace me. And I kept these great customers. So there are very profitable segments that people could be ignoring. May not be your main segment, but it could be a nice addition to the people that you're selling to. Next slide, Dick.
Wait a minute.
Networking to find prospects. Well, the first thing you want to do is make a list. You can be old school and use a notebook, or you can create a great Excel spreadsheet. Go through all your phone contacts. Go through all your Instagram followers. Go through all your Facebook friends. Go through all your LinkedIn connections. And what you want to do is divide it into who can buy from me now, who can buy from me later, and who can provide me with referrals. That piece is just as important as the other two. Referrals can come from friends. They can come from family. They can come from vendors to you since they want to create a deeper relationship with you. They can come from clients. They can come from people who don't buy from you. Let's say you did a wonderful job, but they didn't have the budget. They actually might feel like they kind of owe you something. Or you did a great job, and in the end, they find out the president's brother sells the same thing you are. And that way they cannot help but buy from the brother, but they want to give something back to you. And it's all about how you ask for referrals. If people think you're going to go in and hard nose them, they're very like tentative. Well, I don't know if I know anybody. But if you say, well, I'm looking to, you don't know their situation. I don't know their situation. I would just like to introduce my services to them and tell them what I do. And at some point, if they have a need, I would hope they think of me. I'm really just looking for introductions. I'm looking for exposure. That's a much softer way of trying to get a referral. When you ask people for referrals, it helps if you quote, prime the pump. So people don't know who you need to be referred to. So if you can kind of describe the best customer for you, that will help them think of people. Or go to their LinkedIn before you see them and look at their connections and make a list of the people who you think might be good for them to introduce you to. And that's called priming the pump. Referrals are wonderful, but they're not predictable. You have to prospect in addition to getting referrals. If you go to, for example, a trade show or a conference, you want to talk to as many people as possible. If you go with somebody in your organization, do not sit with them. Let's say 3 people go and you're having lunch at a table of 10. Well, you would meet 7 people, the other people at the table. If each of you sat at a different table, you would meet 27 new people. Even when you're sitting in the audience of, let's say, one of the sessions, you want to sit alone so that you can meet the people on either side of you, in back of you, in front of you. And if you're at a trade show, the minute it's over and the sessions are breaking up, don't run upstairs. What you want to do is go where people are gathering. It may be in the bar, it may be in the lobby. Try and meet as many people as possible. Even if you're drinking an iced tea, just go and try and talk to as many people. I mean, the whole purpose you're there for is probably to gain some knowledge, but it's also to meet as many people as possible. It's also helpful if somebody else fills your pipeline. So I worked with a part-time CFO. She would go to 4 new companies every year and bring me in, and I would do the benefits. And then they would get larger and she would move on to 4 new companies the next year, but I would remain doing the benefits. So I knew somebody was going to help fill my pipeline. It might be, if you're an accountant, it might be somebody who's a financial advisor who he likes, and you might give them leads to that financial advisor. There's many different ways that you can find people to help fill your pipeline. Another way is if you're in the same, like, share leads because you actually have the same prospects. A good example, I had somebody who did very high-end instruments, musical instruments. And what they did was they combined with somebody who did very high-end amplifiers. If you're a wedding provider, let's say a caterer, maybe you should share leads with a florist. If you're actually at a trade conference, I always say talk to the attendees, but also talk to the vendors. Because remember, you're all there to sell the same people. Maybe you can share leads with them. And always think outside the box. When I went, since I worked with startups, I thought about where would all of the founders of the startups be? And it would be at the VC, the Venture Capitalist Christmas Party. I would do anything in the world to get to those parties. And once I was there, I would simply go up to somebody and say, my name's Beverly, and what do you do? And what does your company do? And we'd start a conversation. Then I would say, well, I do benefits. Would you mind if I called you on Monday? I didn't describe anything more about what I did because they're there for a shrimp and a drink. But I did call them on Monday and I got quite a few clients that way. So think outside the box. If your client, if a lot of them do road races, be at one of the road races, have a table there. There's many different ways that you can meet and have exposure. The key is exposure. Next page. Social media. Very important that if you're doing inbound marketing that you stay current, that you post quite a bit to Facebook, to LinkedIn, to Instagram. Hopefully you can even get noticed by an influencer. That would make a great difference. It's great for visual products. There's also a few tools that you can use with LinkedIn. I think one is called Navigator that helps you search through leads even better. Also, join chat rooms. People don't think about that, but you can join a chat room and become an expert in that chat room. And people start to, again, notice you. You want exposure. Cold calling. Cold calling lists work. Sometimes you want to send an email first, follow up with a phone call, send another email. But cold calling does work. That personal touch does work. I used to go, you need the person's name. I used to go to buildings many times when we used to actually do sales in person. And I would look at the marquee of the building and then I would call back the company and I say, I need to send some information to the person in charge of HR. Who should I address that to? They would give me the person's name. Then a day later, I'd call back and ask for that person. So you want to definitely have the direct contact of the person that you need to reach. Blogging and videos, again, very powerful tools. And again, you can help be seen as an expert by creating these. Email campaigns. Email campaigns, for example, through Constant Contact, are great tools, but you have to define your customer. If you defined your customer well, and you got 100 leads, you met with 10, you sold 3. If you did not define your customer well, you might get 500 leads and be all excited. But the fact is, embedded is only 100 good leads. And you'd still see the same 10 people and you'd still sell the same 3. So wouldn't you rather talk to 100 people who are in your sweet spot than 400 more people who are going to say no? So it's going to cost you additional time, money, and hearing a lot of no's. So it's, again, better to define your customer. I would go, you really have to think about sources. And again, that goes back to what Dick was saying, know your customer. We had somebody who started a dental office in Crown Colony, which is in Quincy. And they thought about, okay, most people want to go to a dentist that's close to where they are because that way they don't lose a lot of time. They can go at a lunch hour, just take an hour off. He delivered flower baskets that had his brochure in them. And that's how he raised his practice in that area, because there were a lot of companies around and people wanted to find a local dentist. I thought outside the box and I said, well, I worked with new companies. The Secretary of State used to have a list. I used to go to a phone booth, since they didn't charge you for information from a phone booth, and call information 400 times because this list had names and companies, but didn't have phone numbers. So I was able to catch these companies before anybody else knew about them. Again, successful people do what others aren't willing to do. There's not a lot of people who want to go to the phone booth and call information 400 times. Next slide. Pay-per-click. As everyone probably knows, there's the ads that run above when you open up a page from Google. Those ads is a bidding process. It can be very expensive because when they click on the ad, you are charged. And unless they're going to convert into a sale, that gets to be very expensive. But it is an option for certain types of companies. People on the other side, so that you come up on the first page, do search engine optimization, SEO. I'm sure you've heard about that. SEO is very important. A lot of people need help doing that. There are a lot of professionals. You can put AdWords and create the right website, but you have to have the traffic going to your website. So really pay attention to making sure that you are visible. Also doing things like blogging and getting involved in events and being tagged is very important to create visibility. Direct mail. A lot of people think that's old school, but I can tell you it's going to be spring any moment now, and I would love to find a window washer who would come into Boston. So if I received a direct mail card, even if I received it in January, as they are preparing for it, I would be thrilled and save that card. So direct mail does work for certain industries. Trade shows we've talked about, they're very good. If you are going to a trade show, make sure that you have a very good banner. Make sure that you have enough people. You don't want to be sitting in the back playing with your phone. You want to be up front talking to people. Also be sure that you know how to cut off a conversation that's not leading somewhere, so that you have time to talk to the people who could potentially be clients. Also, have things with your QR code. Very helpful. People will take that. So I don't mean a business card, something larger. Also have your QR code on display. Maybe people, while they're waiting for you to talk, can bring up what your website is. Strategic and complementary partners. We touched on that a little earlier. Strategic partners. A wedding planner might bring in the caterer, filling the pipeline, might bring in the florist. And again, the florist and the caterer might talk to each other. So if you can find people who are talking to the same people you are, you want to partner with them, share leads. Others, if you're selling a food, festivals, open markets, there's many different ways that you can do things. Like wellness people sometimes partner with yoga studios. So you really want to think outside the box. Who actually is talking to the people that I want to be talking to? Next slide. Elevator speech. Everyone should have one. Mine was, I do insurance planning and benefits planning for the high-tech and biotech industry. I love working with the founders of startups. In 2 seconds, you knew exactly what I did and who was my best person for me to talk to, my best customer. Because what you want to do is explain quickly what you do and then find out everything about what they do. Spend all your time talking about them, their company, their problems, their pain points. If they have a vendor that does what you do, find out everything about that vendor. Oh, why'd you pick that vendor? What has that vendor done for you? And say, have you had any problems? And if they say no, remember, you know your customer so well. You could say, has this ever happened to you? Has that ever happened to you? Has that ever happened to you? Because what you want to do is listen and develop the solution. You want to be the solution to every problem that they mentioned. It's all about them. It's not about you. The worst thing you can do as Dick pointed out, is to go in and say, I do this, and go through everything you do. And the person looks at you and goes, oh, that's nice, and then walks away. You've learned nothing about them. They don't know how you could even help them because you haven't gone through that. The other thing is always ask for the order or the follow-up. I once put on my coat and started to leave, and somebody looked at me and says, don't we need to sign paperwork? So we all make mistakes. But what happens when people are talking, try to set a time to talk again, because you don't want to chase somebody for the next appointment. You want to have that appointment and say, why don't we set it up for 2 weeks, and then I'll confirm at the beginning of the week to make sure that it's still a good time for you. And that way, you're more likely to have that appointment stay on the books rather than trying to chase them for 2 weeks to get an appointment and keep pushing this out. So you want to be in charge of the process. Telephone calling does work. Again, sometimes people feel more comfortable sending an email first, but that personal phone call is where you get that information about what their problems are. And if you get 1 or 2 no's, that doesn't mean it's a bad list. It doesn't mean that you're not saying the right things. If you get 100, 200, then you want to think about what you're saying may not be exactly right. And if you do get an appointment, when you hang up, think about what you said that was right. What did you do during that call that was better than some of the other calls? Did you create more rapport? Did you answer their questions? Did you listen more? What was it that really worked? And you want to be positive and have a solid message. I worked in an office that had windows in front of me, and in the fall at 4:30 it gets dark, so I could see my own reflection. And I saw that as I was making these cold calls, I was actually smiling. People can hear if you're happy or positive. If you go in with the attitude, oh, I got to make these next 10 calls, you're not going to get anything from those 10 calls. You might as well have not made them. You have to look at it as, this is my opportunity to make money. Sometimes people talk about offensive work and defensive work. Offensive work is work where you're calling people. Defensive work is the paperwork. So during the work day, when you could talk to people, that's when you want to do your offensive work and try and get as much exposure as you can. Use a script, but do not sound canned. You want to look at your pace, your intonation. You want every call to sound distinct. I used to get my first phone call, always seem to get an appointment from that first phone call. And I think it's because I sounded most interested and I was fresh. It was distinct. So again, even if you have to make those 10 calls before you leave, think about it, settle down, and try and make them sound distinct, that they are the most important person you've talked to all day long. And also, the best time to call is not always the best time for you. I used to call in the summer at 4 o'clock on a Friday. Why? Because the only 2 people working were me and the owner of the company. And I could get through because his assistant was long gone. So very early in the morning was another time when I could reach them. So a lot of times, like I said, successful people do what others aren't willing to do. You have to call at a time that might not be as convenient for you, or do something that's not as convenient for you, but is a good time for you to grow your business. And remember, when you're talking to somebody, the goal is to get a meeting. It is not to sell your product over the phone. Most products cannot be sold over the phone. Just like Dick had said, you have to uncover the problems. So what you want to do is just get the meeting. Ask questions, do not sell. Build rapport, empathy, whatever is going on in their lives, in their work life. The longer you keep them on the phone, the more likely you are to get an appointment. Educate, do not sell. Say, did you know, when you're trying to talk about a problem that they might have or about a solution? Did you know? And if at the end of the conversation they don't want to meet and they say no, always ask, is there a better time for me to call back? You don't know what's going on in their company. They could be waiting to get a big sale before they can do whatever you need to do. They could be looking for venture capital money that's supposed to be closing. They could be moving their offices in 2 weeks. This could be the busiest time of the year. The person might have 5 people in his department and 2 just quit. You don't know. What you want to do is find out when it is a better time for you to get back to them. Ask them when their contracts renew. And you want to call like 3 months before, so that's not exactly at the renewal. You want to meet them. Ask when their slow time of the year is, if they could spare you 15 minutes to just introduce your services to them. So there's many ways to turn a no into a future yes. And be organized and have a client management software. There are a lot of CRM systems out there. Many of them are free. If you are doing a free one, make sure that it can be upgraded, because you don't want to have to take all your data from one system and move it to another system. When you're meeting with somebody, you want to create rapport. The MIT insignia ring is a brass rat. And if I walked into a meeting and they had a brass rat on their finger, I knew I had a new client. Why? Because I knew how to make them feel. Again, it goes back down to emotion. They knew if they worked with me, they were not going to have to worry about a thing. I knew everything about what I was talking about. I would handle any problem that came up. They felt safe. They felt held. So what you want to do is create a sense of rapport and trust. And if you're not sure if you're getting that sort of connection, what I would do is I would touch my face. Because if you're creating rapport, a lot of times they will mirror what you're doing and touch your face. Or put my hands on the desk in front of me. And when I saw them put the hands on the desk in front, then I knew we had created that sort of connection. You want to ask questions. It's the art of listening. They say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use it in that proportion, which means let them do 80% of the talking. You are just providing solutions or even coming back with solutions, but it's really listening to what their problems are, because if there's no problem, there's no sale. The other thing is you do want to know if there's competition, but you don't want to call in the competition. So I would always say, though most people only meet with me, have you talked with anybody else? And I'm going to repeat that. Though most people only meet with me, have you talked with anybody else? That way you're able to find out if there is competition, but you're not saying, oh, it'd be a really good idea to talk to somebody else. Next slide. You always want to talk with the decision maker. Sometimes you have to go in to somebody lower, below the decision maker, but you always want to talk to the decision maker. You do not want the person you talk to bring the information to the decision maker. The problem is that the problems of the person you're talking to may not be the problems of the person who actually makes a decision. You're talking to an engineer and you've got a product that will speed up his job. He's thrilled. But the CFO who makes the decision looks at it, well, I'm already paying this guy. Unless I can get rid of somebody in that department and lower my cost, why would I want to invest in this product? Or unless there's more work that I could give him to fill in that time why would I want to spend money on this product? So he's looking for the return on investment. So you're talking about two different problems that you would be addressing. What you can do is say, great, let's meet with the person who makes the decision. Carry the person you met with into that decision. But you do not want him to present, because think about it, you know everything about your product. And in 1 hour, you explain it to somebody else. And probably by the time you close the door leaving, he's forgot or she's forgot 50%. And then 2 weeks later, when the person meets with the decision maker, they've probably lost another 20%. And if they didn't ask a question that that decision maker has, how are they going to answer it? So it's vital to meet with the decision maker. Affordability. You always want to know if they can afford your product, what the budget is. It's a tougher question to ask. Sometimes you can say, what are you spending with your current vendor? Or what is your budget for this? Because what you want to do is, maybe you can't sell the whole package, but you want to sell, let's say, a base product and with add-ons, or maybe you want to divide this up over 2 years. I have somebody who does seminars. So if they can't purchase the 2-day seminar, maybe they could do something smaller for a morning. There's always ways to work into somebody's budget if you know the budget, rather than the flat out, oh, we can't afford you. My favorite line is, what needs to occur before we move forward? That brings up so much information. It might be that point that you find out there's a different decision maker. Oh, I need to talk to my boss about this. Oh, the president has to be involved in this decision. Or it maybe, wow, we're moving our offices in 2 weeks. I don't think we can talk then. Or, oh, we have a contract that ends in July and we're only in February. There's nothing I can do till then. What needs to occur before we move forward is one of the best lines you can use. In the end, create a pipeline of prospects and make the sale. Dick, back to you.
Wait a minute. Thank you, Beverly. Right on target, as usual, Beverly. We're gonna close. We've got about 5 more minutes, and we're gonna finish with what I started to talk about, and that's setting goals and being held accountable, or holding yourself accountable. So, because it's really important, because you need to, if you set a goal, you need to be able to track your progress to it. Otherwise, you don't know if you're spinning your wheels, if you're going in the right direction, you're going backwards. So setting a goal and being able to track progress to the goals are really important. So your goal really depends on what's important to you and what you count in your business. Do you want to increase your personal income? That's a possible goal. Do you want to add 10% to your sales in some period of time? Do you want to get 10 more clients? All those are legitimate goals, and it's your decision as to what you pick, as to what the goal is. But obviously the most important part is how to achieve these goals. And that's what we call, or I call, a recipe for success. Because achieving these goals is based on the behaviors that you do to make connections with your prospects, to grow your pipeline. And those behaviors may be making phone calls, having Zoom meetings, reaching out to prospects, going to networking events, sending out targeted mail, using direct mail, having an email campaign, replying to inbound inquiries. All these are behaviors, selling behaviors that are really important that you do in order to grow your prospect list and achieve more sales. So, wait a sec. So let me give you an example. Let's say our goal is to add 12 new clients next year. Well, so on average, that means we want to get one new client each month. And you know, just from your past experience, making assumptions here, but you need to start somewhere. You know that if you have 4 meetings, in person or Zoom, really solid meetings, and they may be follow-up meetings after having met the prospect in a networking situation. But if you have 4 meetings with qualified prospects, one of those is going to turn into a new client. That's just based on your experience. So therefore, you need to have one prospect meeting every week to get one new client every month. Because if you have one meeting every week, one of those meetings during that month is going to be turned into a new client. You also know, again, by your past behaviors, that if you have 25, you make one-on-one connections, meetings in a networking situation, any phone call, Zoom, leading a Zoom webinar, and having 3 people say, I'd like to connect with you. If you make 25 connections or conversations, one of those is going to turn into a follow-up meeting. Again, that's by your past experience. So that's your recipe for success. If you make those 25 connections, conversations every week, you're going to get that one meeting for that week. You're going to have 4 of those meetings every month, and one of those is going to turn into a client that month. So it's the 25 connections, doing the behaviors to meet 25 people every week. That's what's going to get you to your goal of 12 new clients every month, 12 new clients every year. Some people are able to hold themselves accountable, create these goals, hold themselves accountable. Frankly, most people can't, and that's where SCORE comes in. We are great. Both Beverly and I would be happy to help you set some goals, create your recipe for success, and hold you accountable. So if you've got some questions, you can put them in the Q&A now. If you'd like to set up a meeting with Beverly or myself or some other SCORE counselor, if we're not the right folks, let us know. Put that information in the chat. And we hope you've enjoyed this seminar and had some good takeaways. Teresa, any follow-ups?
I do have some great questions. So Lynn asks, I'm trying to find my ideal customer, both individuals and businesses, and I'm having a difficult time. I just sent out a short survey to my email subscribers and got 4 replies. Only 4 replies. Do you have any advice?
Well, there's a lot of unknowns there that I think would need a little more conversation. Yeah, my advice is to put your information in the chat, and I'll be happy to talk with you about it. I've got a whole list of questions that I'd want to learn more first.
Yeah, we would need to know what industry you're in, et cetera, and your relationship with your clients.
So folks can, I just put my email into the chat, so you can reach out to me. I help book our mentors for appointments in the Boston chapter. If you want to reach out to somebody in your local chapter, that's going to be through the score.org website. There's information on how to reach a mentor that way as well. So I put that information in. Okay, next question. Are email campaigns truly effective? Does it merely a numbers game, or can we use email campaigns to invite the recipients to an event where we can build a relationship, which I understand is more effective in sales? Thank you for your answer.
Beverly, you want to take a first stab?
Again, it depends what industry you're in, and you can use email campaigns to invite a recipient. I always suggest you try and create your own email list and keep in touch with them as much as you can. But events are very helpful. Again, it depends, again, what industry you're in.
You need a great subject line. Email campaigns are hard. I agree with you. You need a compelling subject line to get the recipient to open your email. frankly, what I like better, if your campaign, if you're not targeting hundreds of people, if you can narrow it down to, you know, dozens, I like a targeted direct letter campaign, where you actually, people open their personal mail. And if you can write a letter, and Beverly or I could help you craft it, making an introduction, highlighting 3 or 4 problems that you solve for your clients, because that's what's going to resonate, and saying that you'll get back to them next week, follow it up with a phone call, then perhaps follow it up with an email. So you make a communications campaign out of it. But I like to get started with that direct mail letter that I believe the person's going to read, and then you follow up from there. But we can talk about if 20 people just isn't in your realm, we can talk about how to make a more effective email campaign to a larger audience.
Okay. And if I can add, as a SCORE chapter, we actually reach more people effectively through our email campaigns than we do through our website and social media, although they all need to go together, like you said. Which actually I'm going to put into the chat. We have a workshop coming up that is about connections, about having your website, your social media, and your email all work together. So I'm going to put that information into chat while they answer the last question. And our last question is, why is it better to have a QR code on something bigger than a business card? I have brochures and people usually ask for something smaller, like a business card.
It depends where you're handing them out for one situation. Let's take the wellness person, or it's something at a trade show. A brochure can be cumbersome, but something the size of a postcard doesn't get lost as easy as a business card. So if you're speaking, I believe it should be bigger than a business card, but smaller than a brochure. But again, it depends on the industry. A brochure is cumbersome because people can't put it in their pocket or in a purse or whatever. But I do like something a little bit bigger than a business card. And you can also put information on it, which you really can't on a business card. I think Canva you can make a lot of cards inexpensively. And people have had a lot of success handing them out, especially when they're doing speeches.
Okay, that was the last question. So
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dick and Beverly, for another fantastic presentation. And again, if you think of something after the fact that you need to ask, you can go ahead and reach out to me and I can connect you to the right people. Outreach@scoreboston.org. Okay, thanks, everyone.